We're on. So I'm so excited today to have Adam Urbanski. Now, then when my Southern accent, did I get it right? Did I get your name right?
Oh, you got it right. You got it right.
Oh, good.
I'm looking for notes from one of our speakers, one of our viewers. So sorry about that. Now I'm messing up your recording.
It's okay. It's all good. Yeah, it's so funny because with my Southern accent and I do presentations, I've learned certain words I have to spell out if I'm in an audience that's not on the East Coast because they have no clue what I'm saying. So no problems. So Adam, let's start off. I've read your bio and all of this, but I like to ask my interviewees to tell me a little bit about themselves because I learn more about them and the audience learns more too. So if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and how you've used webinars in your business.
Oh, dang it. I was hoping you would spend 5 minutes reading my bio and now you're putting me on the spot. So, I'm known as the Millionaire Marketing Mentor. I run a company called The Marketing Mentors, and we primarily teach entrepreneurs one of the hardest things there is to do, which is how to turn the ideas into something that makes money. And even more importantly, how do you then attract clients so that you can sell what you've created, right? And so that's been kind of my bread and butter for the last 15 years or so. My first claim to fame is I came to the United States with virtually no money, $194, built my first business in the restaurant industry up to $1 million in less than 10 years. Experience with webinars, as I started sharing before we actually got officially on the recording, it seemed, when I first started my business in 2000, teleseminars were just kind of becoming popular. People were teaching, what's a teleclass? And I remember on one of my first websites, I actually had a graphic. What is a teleclass? I was like, it's like a workshop over the phone. And I had a graphic with me in the center and people spiking off. You just in your own office, in your own home, at your own home, you're listening on the phone, but you're learning like you were in front of the real presenter in a workshop. So I started doing this. Back then, technology was just, atrocious. I was using Mr. Conference. Oops, sorry, that's me.
It's okay.
Mr. Conference, right, was allowed 20 people. You couldn't mute, couldn't do anything. So you had people flashing the toilet, doing dishes,
barking dogs barking,
kids screaming, the whole 9 yards. But, it was, and I learned, so as you were sharing before you got officially on, that you are so people driven, you need to have the interaction. I've actually, because I started with teleseminars, it was so easy. I trained myself to basically deliver as if I were in front of 1,000 people, but there was nobody in front of me. So, I used to teach teleseminars, pacing up and down, and just to get my energy up. But that's kind of the story. That's how it started. And then in 2003. I started promoting live events, and we started inviting speakers to do interviews.
Okay.
And so this was like the first telesummit.
Wow.
I basically lined up all my speakers. I said, why don't we get on the phone before the event and give a bunch of good stuff and invite people? That worked awesome. And then in 2005, I paid someone $5,000, and I said, get me as many people as you can who have an audience to do a teleclass with me, right? That worked fantastically. She lined me up some of the presentations. Melanie, there were a couple of weeks where I would do up to 5 back then teleseminars a day.
Wow.
So I would be 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 1 p.m., 4 p.m., and some days at 6 p.m. I mean, you could wake me up at midnight and I knew my presentations just like flat because I did it over and over and over again, right? And then in 2009, we started switching to webinars, and kind of the rest is history. I think 2013, was like, I got a huge breakthrough because I promoted one webinar. Every week, I got a different joint venture partners. We sold a $300 program. And that was $1 million revenue stream from one $300 program, just doing it live once a week with a different partner. So that's kind of a long-winded story what got us here.
No, but that was great. That was great information because I think I help people get started doing webinars and I like to call it content casting, because now you have like lab and all these things. So really what you're trying to do is get your content and information out there. And so I work with a lot of people, they're overwhelmed with the technology, overwhelmed with, how do I get people on? And that's why I do these interviews, because everybody has, a different perspective and really great ideas. Oops, you got kicked off there, but hopefully you can come back on in a minute. I'll finish my thought. So basically what happens is, people get overwhelmed and they just never get started with webinars. So that's why I really work hard to, help people get up and going, because it's not hard. It's just a matter of getting yourself, going there.
I'm not on.
You're not on. I can hear you.
Oh, that's weird.
Can you see?
I can see myself.
Okay, let me do this. I'm going to refresh. Sometimes Vlad does this, so let me refresh my screen and see if
Am I on your computer?
Yeah, hold on just a second. Okay, so we got your background now. So can you share like 2 or 3 tips on presenting, producing, or promoting your webinars?
No, I should have prepped better for that. I think the first and biggest tip, and it's actually something I was just writing about on my Facebook page earlier today, is that most people look at webinars as a business. And it really isn't. So you have to, first and foremost, you have to know, what are you in business of, right? Yeah. You've got to know, what are you selling, who are you selling it to? Webinar is just a way to sell it. So I always teach my students that you have to know the who dictates what you will be selling and how you will be selling. So webinars is the how, right? So you have to know who your audience is. You have to know what the big problems are. You have to know what your solution to those problems is. So that's kind of the first. Think more strategically, all right? However, webinars are a great shortcut because, like when I got started, we started doing live events. It's very overwhelming. It can get expensive, and then you've got no people showing up. What do you do on webinars? If nobody shows up, not a big deal, right? You didn't even lose your face because nobody knows if anybody was there or not. If you had one person in listening, they don't know if you have one person or 10,000 people, right? Right. So really think more strategically and just get started teaching. All right. The second thing is build your audience in advance. I think that's another thing. The biggest question people always have is, how do I promote? Yeah. And look, if you have money to throw at it, you can use paid advertising and start getting subscribers or registrations for your webinars pretty much right away. Right. And, the spectrum of how expensive it is really from people claim to have registrants for a few cents. And I've done this, but that's usually with the audience you already have. Yeah. With the cold audience, it can cost you $10, $15 sometimes just to get a webinar registration if you're just getting started. So it can get expensive. However, if you start teaching good stuff, you can start having your own Facebook page and Facebook group. Yeah. And the difference is page is kind of talking at people. A group, you have a conversation, you have a dialogue, right? So you can get ideas from the group. What do they want? LinkedIn group, be active on Twitter, and where you have a little bit of interaction, and then drive people to something of your own, right? I mean, this is nothing revolutionary here, and people think, how does this relate to webinars? Well, realize webinar is just a way to get people. It's an accelerator, right? It allows you to hear your voice. It allows you to experience your teaching, and it convinces them that you know your stuff, and it builds the desire to go with you further.
Yeah, it gets to the whole idea of know, like, and trust. People see you on screen. And I do think for a lot of people, maybe under or over, I'll say 40, I'll pick an age, being on camera is tough. For the people under 40, it's probably not so tough because they've been on camera their whole life, right? With technology and how it's changed. But it really is about, and I know a lot of people are afraid of it. And I know for me, I started doing webinars a long time ago when I wasn't on camera. And like 2 or 3 years ago when I started getting on camera, it took me a while to get comfortable seeing myself on camera. Even though, I'd done webinars forever, it's a little bit different experience. But I think things like Blab, I think that's another way to build, your audience, and also test out. If you put a headline up and no one shows up, you don't have the right headline or the right subject
yeah.
matter. It's just a way to inexpensively, I think, test things out. So, or Periscope.
I think that would be, that's actually, you tapped into another great suggestion, and that was kind of on my list of, what things we could talk about, which is start testing your ideas in a way that doesn't overwhelm you technologically.
Yes.
There are some of the webinar platforms, and again, one of the bigger questions people always have is like, which platform? Frankly, it really doesn't matter. Most people ask this question because they don't have figured out their business. So look, I actually tell people start with instant teleseminar.
Exactly. Yeah.
And why? Because it has a presentation mode where you can display slides. If you don't need to show people your screen, then you can just forward the slides. It's super easy to master. There's not a lot of technology. There is no software to download. People know how to use it, so it's very cool. And then another one is use things like Blub and Periscope and anything else, and invite someone else to have a conversation with you to start being comfortable teaching and having dialogue where people listen in.
Exactly. That's what I tell people. If you're brand new to trying to get your content out, then something like Blab or Periscope, or I think teleseminars as well. You think it wouldn't be hard to get your ideas out, but to start verbalizing, sometimes it's tough to take it from here to here and get it out. So just start talking, start, voicing your concepts and stuff.
So one last tip for people that want to do more webinars, and this is probably highly unusual because webinar is a visual and auditory media. And again, you just tapped into this. And the tip is write articles. Yeah. And the reason for it is we are very lazy communicators. Yes. So we often think that we say something, but we actually are not saying it at all. Or we use so many mental shortcuts where only half of the sentence comes out, where the audience kind of on the other end sits there, goes like, what? But when you write an article, it forces you, when you reread it and you go, if I'm reading this as someone who's never heard from me, do I actually know what the heck this article says?
Yeah, what are they talking about?
Yeah, it teaches you to be a better communicator, and it allows you to be better at explaining your own methodologies, your own lessons. So I think writing is one of those quintessential skills that people should be practicing regularly.
I would agree with you. It helps you organize your thoughts as well, because like you said, it's all up here, but when I have to tell you how to do something, if I hadn't thought about step by step, then I'm going to leave out 2 or 3 of those steps because I just do them. I don't think about them anymore. It's become subconscious. But when you write it out, or when you tell somebody, or have a conversation, teach somebody else how to do it, suddenly those things will start coming out for you.
Exactly.
So I think, Brian, that's a great tip. So this is one of my favorite questions because I like people to know that none of us are perfect. So what is one mistake that people make or that you've made when doing webinars?
Oh boy, the better question would be, is there a mistake I haven't made?
Me too.
So, man, number one is not building an audience in advance, right? So actually, when I first started in business, I didn't build the audience. It didn't even focus on building an audience. So that was a big mistake. But there's a few further. So teaching too much. I have a desire to be liked. And mistakenly, I link in my head that if I teach more, then people will like me more, and therefore they will buy more. Nothing further from the truth. Just because you can teach well doesn't mean you're going to sell well. It's a subset of what you need to learn. Not promoting enough. So just. Again, I would send one email and thinking, well, I let people know. I mean, if they didn't sign up, I guess that's it. And then once they sign up, not sending enough reminders. And again, well, they registered, so I guess, they probably booked it on the schedule. So there's no point.
They're just as excited as I am about it, right?
Yeah. I think those are the biggest ones. Oh, you know what? Now, I have not made this mistake, but there's a mistake that I see my clients make a lot. And what they try to do is they try to automate before they validate.
Amen.
And, because they try to automate, they exponentially increase the technical difficulty of creating the webinar. And, there is just, even if you're just displaying slides and teaching, knowing that you have a live audience just kind of changes the dynamics. You sound differently. Yes. You don't allow yourself for a lot of, thinking and breaks and long pauses because your audience is waiting. You tend to be paced differently. And regardless of what technology you use, there is usually some way to get a little bit of feedback. Even if you just tell people press the one sign on your keyboard or something to let me know that you are listening, that you like what I'm saying.
Exactly.
With automation, all of that is missing. And people will take weeks, often months, to get an automated presentation out there. And it wasn't even validated.
And so you don't know
you don't know if the topic was right. You don't know if the content was right. You don't even know if the audience wants it. You don't even know if it sells.
Exactly. And when you do that, you don't know where the problem lies.
Exactly.
Right? Because until you've proven, like if you're doing a webinar, because most people who automate are doing webinars to sell something, right? So if you haven't proven that what you're doing sells something, but you automate it, you don't know if it's the problem with the webinar, it's problem with the traffic you're sending to it. If it, you can't narrow it down. So I will say the funny thing in my full-time job, we do these live presentations. And when we first started doing this, they wanted us to record it as well. Mm-hmm. So we would offer them live, but have a recording out there. And I'm like, okay, some of these were brand new presentations. And I'm like, okay, I am going to do this presentation at least 3 times before I record it. And they would always ask why. And I'm like, because every time I do it, I can tone it in a little bit better. And by the 3rd or 4th time, I can record it. I've got it down. But I have to laugh. I was working on a presentation right before we got on that I'm doing on Monday. And I've probably done this presentation 25 times. And I realized, I can make this slide better. So because I'm doing it, it's for webinar. Because sometimes I do this presentation live, so I can use, like a laser light or something to highlight something.
Yep.
But, as many times as I've done this presentation, almost every time when I review it, I always find a tweak to make it better.
Yep.
So I don't believe in perfection. We talked about that earlier, right? But I do believe you're always improving, and you should always be looking for improvements. So
That's true.
Yeah, so I agree with and I want to say it the way you said it, automate. What did you say? Something about automating.
So people try to automate before they validate.
There you go. And that's the truth. And it's, as you probably know, there's been a big push recently for a couple of people selling different software packages for doing, evergreen webinars, automated, whatever you want to call them. And I don't have anything against doing those because I think there's a lot of value in it. It's just not where you start. And so I totally agree with you on that.
One last thing I'll share with you. So again, this validate before you automate. We've done so many teleseminars and webinars, and every single time I do a webinar, even I'm got an echo now in I don't know why for some reason. Anyway,
I'm not hearing it, so we're good.
Even if it's the same webinar that I've done before, if I'm doing it live, we still have every 5 minutes, we do an audience check. And what I mean by that, I've got somebody who's designated to check how many participants we have.
Right.
And then in the places where I actually would transition from teaching to selling, and then throughout the selling part, we may even do an audience check every 60 seconds.
Wow.
And, at the end of the webinar, I review my content versus my count. Yeah. So I know, where do I need to tweak? Where did I lose my audience? What was not engaging enough?
Yeah, where are people dropping off of your...
Yeah, which, leads to one last tip I'll share with you. I probably should have shared it first, which is, once you test things. So initially, you can test things by put together 5 sign-up pages for the webinar, and each one give it a different headline and different 3 bullet points, and see which one gets the most sign-ups.
Right.
So you can quickly test which one you want to host. Now, once you find that one, don't go developing 7 more. Practice that one. When you think about the best speakers and teachers, they may have, 3 presentations that they tweak a little bit to the audience, but they deliver the same teaching over and over and over and over again. And creatives like you and I, we often get tempted, like, okay, I already taught that, so let me go and develop another
I
webinar.
want to do something new. Exactly.
Big mistake. Stick with one and you tweak it and perfect it and measure how your audience responds. You can measure what the results you get at the end, and you can improve it because, again, you can compare different responses, different results based on the tweaks you implemented.
Well, and I'll add on to that because the presentation I was talking about before that I tweaked today, I know for a fact that I developed it in 2012 because I saw the date on something when I was looking at it. So this is a presentation that's been used for 4 years, not just by me, but a couple of my coworkers also do it. And so, yeah, I mean, just because I did it 4 years ago, I have a new audience on Monday that's never seen it.
Yep.
So, you know, you have to keep in mind and you have to keep fresh because it's easy if you do the same thing over and over to kind of get bored with it. And so you do have to, you know, keep the energy up and things like that if you're doing the same presentation. So
that's often a challenge.
It is. It can be.
Because we get bored with our own stuff.
Exactly. I've said that before. They've heard it. And yeah, there's different people in the audience. So do you have another tip you want to share before we move to the next question? Or?
Another tip? No, let's go with the next question.
Okay.
I think we'll probably emerge.
It's all right. So what is one thing listeners could do today that would make a big difference in their webinars? If there was only one thing they could take from today's interview.
One thing. Dang it, I should have kept that participant count. That would have been big. But, you know, one thing I would say, once you get to the actual webinar, learn how to teach and sell. And I mentioned that earlier, but just teaching is not the same as selling.
Yeah.
So most people have the tendency to get better at their topic, whatever it is that they do. But you want to get better, it is marketing and selling, and especially the psychology of buying. So, you know, most people get on the teleseminar or webinar, and I keep saying teleseminar because, again, it's even today, it's not a bad way to get started if you're brand new. Don't say, I have to do a webinar. You know, you may start with a teleseminar. It's simpler. People still love teleseminars. I still use them.
Yeah.
And when learn that, I just lost my train of thought. It was about teaching and selling, right? Okay. So whatever you do, teleseminar or webinar, some people get started and then they go, well, no, nobody bought. You know, I thought I delivered like my best stuff and nobody bought. Well, they didn't buy is because you watch maybe some other people and you spent half an hour telling your story, giving people 20 minutes of some, you know, maybe good content, and then another 20 minutes pitching. However, your story and your content were probably not even related to what you were pitching, not close enough. You failed to deliver content that really got people excited about wanting to get more stuff. I would often call it teach and sell or teach to sell or stretch teaching. So I'm going to give you a formula here. The way you want to teach is you want to tell people what they need to do to solve whatever problem or you may actually say this. Tell people what problem they're experiencing because you're showcasing that you understand the problem. Tell people what they need to do to fix that problem, but in a conceptual, fairly broad level, because if you get too nitty-gritty, you may overwhelm them. And it doesn't mean do not give good content. It doesn't mean do not give technical details. Just be careful with it, right? You teach them what they need to do. The third step you do is you teach them why they need to do it. All right? And then the fourth part is you either share you share an example, a case study, or a statistic. And you repeat this cycle, let's say 3 times. So you have like 3 teaching points. And now your offer should be an improvement to what you just taught them. So let's say that I taught you, that was one of my lessons, right? I would say, look, what you have to learn is how to teach and sell. And here's why it's important. And here's what happens if you don't know how to do this. And then in my actual offer, I would say, and as part of our training, what you get is an actual template how to structure a presentation that teaches and sells. Step by step, word by word, bullet by bullet, will teach you how to do it the right way. So in other words, the key message here that I want folks to get is you want to tell your audience what to do, and even a little bit of how to do, and then your offer needs to help them do it better and faster. And if you do it that way, you will always get better results from whatever presentation you're doing to sell.
I think that's really great advice. I'll just add on, because I think sometimes people, like I thought, people get overwhelmed. So at least start. So if right now where you are is teaching, teach, but understand you don't have the pitching part yet. But teach, get your word out, and just keep making baby steps or giant steps, depending on where you are. Every time you do something, add something to it. So I think exactly what you laid out there, start off with that, start off with that format as close as you can be, and improve it every time. And you'll start seeing what works and what doesn't work, either by monitoring the counts like you're talking about, by just making little twists or turns. And for me, I like watching other webinars. I'll watch other webinars and see what people are doing. And sometimes I look at it and go, oh, okay, I can't do that. That's not my style. It's not that it's bad. It's just not what I'd feel comfortable with. But sometimes I can see somebody, I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing. Let me see if I can implement that, that phrase or that kind of thing. So
that's a great approach. You want to watch other people. And, the lesson I always share with my students is you want to learn from content and context.
Yes.
And, just to explain what it means, content. So if you watch, let's say you take a webinar on marketing, right? Or even someone who teaches webinars how to do webinars. There are two paths you want to follow. So content is what they teach you, right? So they give you do this, do this, do this. That's fantastic. What you want to observe is the context, which is what they say, when they say it, and how they say it. So you kind of have the whole picture. Now, why would you do that? Because if someone actually is teaching what they really do and they're good at it, then you have an opportunity to watch a master craftsman building a masterpiece, right? So the content is the masterpiece, but if you want to yourself create a masterpiece, you want to observe how the master crafted it. And if you know how to decipher lessons from that contextual observation, that's priceless. When I go to live events today, I do the same thing. There is not so much new content, but watching how the event is structured, watching how the speaker handles the audience, there is magic there. There.
For sure. I've been very blessed in my life to see many, many live presenters, some of the top, or not some, the top in the world. And it's funny to me now because I do a lot of technical presentations. That's what I do for my job. And, so there, I'm not going to be on the stage, doing really, motivational. That's not what I do normally. So, but I've learned from them what keeps the audience engaged. And I don't care what your topic is, you can learn that skill set to keep them engaged. And I deal with some very geeky, technical people. I won't, and yet I can make them laugh. I can keep them engaged and involved. And it's just because I've picked up those tips, like you said, and watching other people, how are they able to keep them involved? Tell a story, tell a joke. Jokes are kind of funny, but you can, kind of make fun of yourself and people will laugh because they've been there. If you're, you connect, that kind of thing. So yeah, I agree with you. You really, watch the content and the context. That's very key as well.
You mentioned a very important thing earlier, and I don't want to skimp over it, and that is don't beat yourself up when you're starting.
Yeah.
Because what you often see when you register for other people's webinars is years of work and practicing, whether it was on the webinars or on the, on real stage presentations. And even the big names sometimes fall completely flat on the faces and we get zero results or not what we would anticipate up front, right? We still fail. We don't live up to the expectations we set out for ourselves. And then the hardest thing, especially when you're getting started, is when you put so much work into this, you stress, you sweat it, you put the presentation together, you promote it, and maybe not as many people showed up as you wanted to, or maybe something didn't quite work out in your presentation and the result, it wasn't what you anticipated. It's so easy to get discouraged. Don't just, give yourself a pat on the back for what you did put together, for what you did accomplish, and then do what I call life's greatest teacher experience exercise. And life's greatest teacher is actually your own experience.
Right.
But most people don't use it. And what happens is, look, so we set out expectations. This is a little bit outside of webinar, but folks, this is so helpful if you grasp this.
Yeah.
We set out expectations for ourselves. And here's how we perform as human beings. You know, here's the expectation. If we hit it or exceed it, we go like, wow, high five, man, life is awesome. Let me just go do it again. Let me tell everybody how great I am, right? If we set expectation and we don't hit it, we get disappointed. We get like, oh, that sucked. I'm horrible. I'm a horrible human being. Nobody loves me.
As I know it.
You know,
Yeah.
I can just go and jump off the bridge, right?
Exactly.
But if you look at it and say, okay, so what worked? What didn't work? What could I have done differently? And now let me do this again, and don't do what didn't work and do more of what worked. And you end up with better results next time.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. I think some of the things I've realized in life is, you know, one thing I learned, realized in presenting, and it was something somewhere along the way when I first doing public presentations, and I would be so, you know, literally my hands would be shaking. I realized at some point that the people in the audience have no idea what I was going to say. So if I don't say it quite right, the way I wanted to say it, they don't know the difference. And once I kind of got that in my head, it sort of, released some of the stress and the nerves and all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing I realized is that if you step out and do the things outside of your comfort zone, you get out and you do your first webinar, even if you don't think it's very good, you've still done something that 95% of the people in this population have never done.
So true. So true.
And so be in that group. You know, you're still so much further ahead than people who haven't even tried. Yeah. And so, you know, you may find maybe webinars aren't for you. Maybe, you know, I've interviewed different people and they like blabs, or they like teleseminars, or they like, you know, try different things. Don't get stuck in one. You know, you might, like you started with teleseminars, but you didn't stay there. You may still use them sometimes for some stuff, because in the right context, they're a great vehicle. But, you know, just keep trying different things, and you'll find your niche. You'll find, you know, your path that you need to be on.
Yep. Yeah. You know, when I first started this business, the coaching and consulting, like so many people, I networked to get clients, and I was horrible at it.
Oh, I'm still not great at it. I'm just going to say, it's just not my.
You know, I just don't. I actually, my entire business came out of the fact that I didn't like networking that much. But the lesson here I want to share is this: that one of the pivotal points for me happened when I said, you know what? I realized there's a paradox in networking, that everybody goes there to get clients. Yes. Therefore, everybody there is selling. Yes. So who the hell is buying? Right?
Exactly.
I said, you know what?
Thought.
Let me actually go to networking events and do things differently. Let me look for two things. Number one, actually three things. For people that I can help. Right. Number two, for people that I would love to get together and just hang out. Just make friends, go to dinner and, you know, have a drink. And three, have people who can meet people who can introduce me to lots of people that would love to learn from what I do. And, you know, so I basically showed up to help people, and that made all the difference. Now, I'm mentioning this because whether you do, again, teleseminar or webinar, when you're nervous and you're afraid of, you know, what will it be like and will you deliver on people's expectations, realize this: your audience wants you to succeed. Why? Because if you succeed, they win.
Exactly.
Obviously, the better you do, the better off they are from your presentation. So this myth of hostile audience, let me tell you, in 15 years of public presentations, I had one audience that was just an energy drain. And I was like, who the hell are those people? They didn't care about anything I had to say.
Why are they here?
That was one.
Oh, no. I don't know if you guys, we lost you again. I'm not sure what happened. Try to refresh because I've lost you. But I'll agree with you. I will say in all of my presentations, I've had a few, I've had a heckler or two, but not many, and out of the hundreds and hundreds of presentations I've done. So, I totally agree with you. I'm going to, since I've lost Adam, I'm going to kick him off, and hopefully he can join back in here. Adam's totally right. Most people in your audience are there. They want you to succeed. They're there because they want to hear what you have to say. They wouldn't have given their time to you to, to be there because they've committed an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, to come hear you. So they're there to hear what you have to say. So that's what I would keep.
We are back.
A great thing. Hopefully we proved to people today, you just keep going. You know what? You keep going. You do the best you can do with technology because it's technology. That's what it is.
So 2 things to finish that lesson. Show up on a webinar with the intention to help people.
Yes.
Don't get all of this like, let me tell you, when I first started public presentations, I did better, and then my results started dipping. Why? Because at first, I didn't know jack about how to speak and sell, but I just came with my heart, and I was like, I'm here to help you. And at the end, I would say, if this helped you, here's how you continue that helpfulness, getting that helpfulness from me. That was like my earnest approach. And then I started learning all the little manipulation techniques, and my results sucked, right? So go up to help people. Second thing, you know what? In 2000, you would pay $1,000 just flat fee and something like, I forget what it was, like $9 a minute per participant to deliver a webinar. In 2002, crazy money to a person like you and me, totally inaccessible. And now, and this was like a junky, clunky presentation where you could just display slides, no interaction, zero. Look, today, you can actually see us on the screen, and it costs zero to do this. And you can start today, start doing your own blog on Periscope, and just start teaching. And remember, when you pitch, people run. But when you teach, people start coming to you.
I will say, and this is something I've struggled a little bit with Blab, but I try on every Blab to do a call to action. And that is how to connect with me. I put your link on there a couple times for the report that you're offering free, and I'll put it on there again in a minute. But be sure and put that kind of stuff because you do want to connect with your audience. You want to build the list like we were talking about earlier, right? You want to build and attract people to your your teaching, your webinars, your teleseminars, whatever you're doing. But on Blab, I think people forget to do that as much as they don't like selling. But your call to actions are good. Free reports are good. People want to get to know you. And what I found out on Blab is that people would ask, how can I connect with you? And I'm like, oh yeah, I probably should tell you that, right? So, and that's true in the webinars. If you don't feel comfortable selling, just offer them something to start with. Get on and teach a little bit, offer them a free report, offer them, to connect with you on your Facebook group. There's all kinds of ways to provide value to people. So,
if you're not sure what to do, just, so tell people this, look, I don't want to sell you anything, but if you could email me your credit card number, you never know if I want to buy something. So I could use your credit card and just email it to me.
Exactly. I'm good with that. So I have one final question, and then we'll answer the questions that people have. So if you guys want to put additional questions, you can. This is just kind of my fun question I like to ask everybody because there's always great answers. If you could interview or be interviewed by anyone, who would that be?
So that's a really interesting question because, man, being a creative, I'm like, what do I zero in on? So I'll probably have to say Richard Branson, all right, to interview Richard Branson.
Somebody gave me that answer that I interviewed recently. It's funny.
Yeah. And the reason why is just, I perceive him to be like this creative genius, but he found a way to harness it and to build so many different companies where he doesn't have to be involved in them anymore. And I just think he'll be a fascinating person to talk with. But, even more to that question with my answer is I actually love interviewing. I'd love to interview you. And to me, it's not the person you're interviewing, it's learning better questions. Because I am finding that, everybody that's an entrepreneur, that's in business, even if they haven't knocked it out of the park yet, they still have amazing lessons to share if you just know what to ask. And you will be amazed that even people that consider themselves a failure, to someone else, what they've already learned is like the bridge to success you've been searching for. So it's all about, don't worry about who you're going to be interviewing, who will be interviewing you. Learn to be a better interviewer, because it's going to make you a better interviewee at the same time, if that's the word.
Yeah, and that makes it. I'll tell you, when I started doing this podcast, and I was nervous to start interviewing people. So the first couple of people I interviewed were friends of mine, but I knew they were doing webinars, and I thought, okay, I'll feel comfortable with that. But before that, I had actually figured out everybody has a story to tell, and if you can get to that story, it's inspirational. We all have some, we've all overcome some kind of challenge. Which will be inspirational to somebody.
What challenge? Exactly. I got no challenges.
It's my stutter that I go. My challenge was I talk really, 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 really fast. I could tell you about a webinar I did one time like that. And I knew I was doing it and I couldn't stop. I could hear myself. And it was so funny because this was for my job, and we always do surveys. And sure enough, I had all these comments. She talked really fast. And I was like, I know, but I couldn't stop. So you know these things. So
that would be me.
Let's take a look at some of the questions. I have one here. It says, how do you coach clients? Oh, before I go to questions, somebody asked me to ask you this question. This was all on, I think, Twitter or somewhere. But you're doing a special with Dr. and Master Shah in Los Angeles in February?
Am I?
I don't know. Somebody told me to ask you that, so I'm asking. I don't know.
Not that I know of, but hey, hit me up on Facebook or Twitter and ask me more details. Maybe I am. I don't know. I don't know about it.
Somebody said, be sure and ask that question. I'm like, okay, I will. So I did. I did my best.
And I think Gregory was asking if I'm Polish. So absolutely. I'm 100% Polak.
Well, that was an easy one. So here's another one. How do you coach clients to practice a 7-figure mindset rather than settle for a 6-figure income? That's a pretty good one.
I forget which book I got this lesson from. It might actually be Never Eat Alone. What's the book that you just had in your hand earlier today? Do you remember the title? Sorry, I'm talking to somebody off screen here.
I was like, do I have a book in my hand?
The one was it Never Eat Alone? Could have been Never Eat Alone or something like this. The lesson was that you can't change someone's mindset. The only thing you can do is, hang on a second, I've got interruptions here, left and right.
Oh, no.
All right. Why is it doing this?
I have that problem sometimes. When one phone rings, they all ring, and I can't figure out how to make it stop. So
yeah, I've got it all connected everywhere, so they all beep.
Yeah,
you can't change. You can't teach someone how to change the thinking.
Yeah,
you can only give them a tool that would facilitate the changing of the thoughts, of the thinking. Right. So you ask people questions. And by the way, not everybody wants to build a 7-figure business. This is something I had to learn. That, when you at a certain level, you see opportunities and you think everybody should be harvesting those opportunities. If you're in a penthouse, you go, everybody should want to live in the penthouse. Someone who lives in a dungeon, like below the basement, their dream is to just get to the basement. Exactly. And then they go, if I could just get, above the ground and live on the first story, man, they'll be like mind blowing. So the point is not how to get them to 7 figures. It's how to awaken them to dream a little bit bigger and want to get to the next step and to the next step. And aside from that, lessons I learned from direct selling years ago, dream build. Go and experience the things that you want to experience. So, go and walk through the house that you would ideally want to live in. Find an open house and walk through it. And then go, start thinking, what would that be like? And not just the positive, but, negatives. But what's the upkeep of something like this? Do I want to really tie my life to something like this? Go and drive the car that you think you would want to, like your mind-blowing dream car. And then you start asking yourself, what do I need to do? And most importantly, who do I have to become? This is one lesson I teach my clients all the time. In life, you don't get what you want. In life, you get who you are or what you are. And if you don't start change what you are and who you are, you're going to keep getting the same thing.
Yeah. And I think it's the truth is to ask them what they want. And this doesn't have to do with success, but I had a friend years and years ago that was afraid of flying. And I don't know why, but the question, we were on a plane and the question came up. I'm like, well, if you could get over your fear of flying, would you? And she said, no. And it shocked me. because I was like, why wouldn't you? You know, so it was to me, that was just kind of weird. But like you said, some people where they're at, they're comfortable with that. Yeah. So I think you do have to know that they want. Now, I think anybody that you ask is going to say, oh, yeah, I want a 7-figure income. Yeah. But do they want to be the person that they have to be?
I will share with you one lesson. Jim Rohn once said that you become the average of the 5 people you hang out with. And people kind of, they sort of get it, but people really don't get it. Yeah. So a number of years ago, this is like before my business took off, I had this mentor, Richard, and I made a certain dollar amount a year. And he said, how much do you want to make? I said, I want to make 5 times this much. And he said, this will not happen. And I was like disappointed, like, how can you tell me? It's like, and he's the most loving and caring person, the reason it's not going to happen, and especially not within a year, is because you're hanging out with the wrong people.
Yeah.
And that's just like, when you really ponder this, most folks hang out with people that drag them down, rather than people that intimidate you on a certain level. The reason that you feel intimidated is because they have some shit figured out better than you do. And it intimidates you. But it's exactly why you want to hang out with them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I honestly it's been probably 4 or 5 years ago. I like people, and I like to help people. And I think everybody's, I don't know, but I had to really sit back and think, you know what? I need the circle of friends around me, or circle of influence that I hang out with that makes me a better person, and I help them be better too. It's not a one-way street. And I really made conscious decisions on who I hang out with on a regular basis. And it makes a huge difference. I mean, it has made me a better person. So, and I hang out with people that encourage me, when I'm going down a path where I'm not comfortable. I have people that encourage me along that path, and that's what you have to look for, I think. So,
I know we've got more questions. I have to share with you one thing. Since I think this is like the second blab I'm doing, and what's unnerving about it for me, just watching the people at the top, they kind of come and go. I'm like, what? They don't like me. What's wrong? On the webinar, my experience, once people get in, they tend to stick with us pretty much for 90% of the presentation, right? Yeah. And in here, I'm kind of going like, what's going on?
It is different. And I had to do, the same thing. You look at it and you see the names and stuff like that and the numbers. And I've had to learn with Blab, just to, instead of concentrate on the numbers at the top, is to concentrate on what people are putting in the comments and the questions, because those are the people that are your audience. They're the ones that are sticking with you. They're the ones that are, and the good thing about Blab though is it has the opportunity of people that don't know you to come on and check you out. And they may be leaving because they're not your audience, or they may be leaving because they just don't have time right now. They just came in to see what it was about, and they can come back later and watch a replay. So, it's a little bit different thought than the webinars, but I'm like you. When I first got on, I'm like, well, it said 60 people, but I only had 2 on there, most of the time.
So I want to share again, this is kind of, for those who get it, this is profound. I want to highlight this. I just had an aha moment just from what you said. And, you had a lot more experience with blobs than I do. So my focus is on those numbers at the top going like, what's wrong? They don't like my haircut. Why are they leaving? And you're focusing on the wrong thing. You've got people that are asking questions, people that are interacting. Focus on your audience. I'm like, duh. I teach this all the time. You preach to the choir.
Me too.
And instead, I'm trying to preach to people who are leaving and worrying about them. What the heck? That was a profound tip, and it only comes because you've done this so many times.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we have somebody that's getting ready to leave that's asked a couple of questions. So I want to see if we can get her questions in before she has to jump off. One of them is, when you were doing weekly webinars with various partners, how far in advance did you schedule, and how did you organize that?
You know what? I would often schedule it as quickly as the following week. So another tip here is that I was looking for partners who are not well-known names. So they didn't have like a 3-month waiting schedule. In fact, when I would reach out to them, they'll be like, oh my God, you want to do a JV with me? Wow, nobody's asking me. And I'd say, when do you have an opening in your schedule? It's like, hey, I called them on Tuesday. I said, look, yeah, I would call on Monday and say, I'm great. Let's do a webinar on Thursday. I'm going to have materials for you later today. You send 3 emails, we'll be on Thursday, right? It typically wouldn't be that fast. It would be more like a week. But yeah, if they were ready, we were ready. So it really depends on your partners more than you. You've got to be ready. If they say, look, you contact them on Monday, and I say, I can do it on Friday, you better be ready to give them all the stuff so they can deploy it. I think for most people, somewhere between 2 weeks to 3 months is kind of what you have to facilitate.
And she's put a follow-up question here. With your JV partners, did you give them emails to send out, and how many?
Absolutely. Yes, we give them emails, and I give people 3 emails. And the 3 emails actually, so the 3 emails will often be 6 because there was a short version and a long version. Right, so they could choose, or they could then modify whatever the heck they wanted to do with it. And in fact, because I've done so many of them, we also gave them a document that said, look, here's the big mistake most people make. They promote only once or twice, and they skip the 3rd email. What we've learned is that the first email gets about 40% of response of the numbers of registrations. The second email will get between 10 to 20, typically around 10, and the last email will get you up to 50% more registrations. Wow. So I said, look, if we do a partnership and you skip the last email, we are both out of 50% of the revenue we could be earning because you decided that last email, well, it's a little too much. If you don't want to do 3, let's do nothing at all.
That's an incredible, because I didn't realize that. So I think that's really key for a lot of people to hear that, really hear that. Another question we have, and it's funny because I've gotten in debates with people about this, so it'd be good to get your perspective on this. So do you take questions or not if you're selling something on a webinar?
That's really a toss-up, and it can go either way. So typically, yes. Typically, yes. If the audience is asking questions, the right questions, that typically means they're buying.
Right. Well, let me throw this in because this was the other thing. Do you take them before you make the offer or after you make the offer?
I take them after I make an offer.
That's what I suggest to people as well. But I've had a few people go, no. I just tell people to test. If you do it one way and you don't think you get as much as you want, then try it another way, and then you know what works for you and your audience, right?
Yeah, I've tried in live presentations to take questions before the offer. It just does not work very well. It kind of throws off the rhythm. But there's one thing that you have to realize you have an advantage of in webinars over live presentations, and that is you control which questions you're going to answer.
Yes.
You see them coming. And the big tip here is this is your playground. You don't have to answer all the questions.
Yeah.
So if I could share here a tip with you, you want to answer questions that facilitate buying.
Yes.
So if someone raises their hand and they start saying things like, oh, great presentations, but I don't have any money, and, I'm really not ready. I'm looking to do this like a year from now, so I'm really not buying today, but great present. It's like, hey, thank you. Click. You shut them up. Say, hey, thank you, but this is really for people that are moving forward with us and want to know a little bit more about what to expect when they get involved. And ideally, if that question like this comes up and you see that in writing, like, I'm not buying, but don't even get there. It's like, sorry, I am focusing on people that are my audience, that want to play with me, and they have priority.
Well, and I found people that ask questions too that they want to take you down their path instead of my path. Yeah. So you need to know what your path is, right? Yeah. So, and I don't think it's funny because there was a debate on one of the Facebook groups about this the other day, and people are like, well, if you don't answer all the questions, then people won't buy. And I'm like, yeah, that's not true. Yeah. It's if you have a very active audience, you can answer all the questions usually.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It is what it is. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I don't see any more questions.
So a shout out to Lisa. Thanks for asking the Da Vinci Diva. Thank you for asking all the questions. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do too. Before we let everybody go, if anybody has a question, I'll give you another minute or something to ask a question, and we'll look for it. I'm going to share. I've shared it a couple times. You had this free blueprint. Do you want to talk about it a little bit as I share it in the chat what it is?
So, what we've done, aside from doing like a webinar a week and doing well with it, over the last couple of years, I switched to doing webinars to drive people to consultations to sell higher end products. So that works very well. And we really figured out how to do it very, 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 very well. So I put together a blueprint, and you can get it at the webinarcashmachine.com/blueprint. And it takes you through the 10 key steps. Really gives you a bird's eye view how to set up your webinar. And there is a little bit of enough detail to get you started. I can tell you right up front, if you're looking for which webinar platform I should use, that's not what it's about. But it's really about really grasping the methodology so that you can do it the right way from A to Z.
Well, now I'll add in, because that's the number one question I get, which platform should I use? Yeah. And the truth is, I've been very careful not to say you have to use this one, because I actually bought a bunch of webinar courses before I started going down this path. And, some people, you got to use GoToWebinar, you got to use, Webinar Jam, you got to use whatever, pick your favorite. The truth is, it's a vehicle, so you can change it. So pick one, learn it enough to do what you got to do, and then try some different ones. And one's going to be better than the other based on what you're doing. If you're teaching, small courses, then, one's going to be better than if you're trying to, pitch to thousands. And you just have to figure out what it is you're trying to do. And you'll find the one that makes you happy that way.
Absolutely. I'm looking for a marker. I don't have one, but I can tell you, use Google Hangouts. Actually, use something like this. Use Blab. It's so good. I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to try it.
There you go. Yep, I can read it. That's a great way to do it.
Is it in reverse or is it?
And do it.
Perfect. So look, get yourself a bunch of sticky notes. And I've had presentations for like audience that pays $5,000 to come to an event, and I would use a Google Hangout. Yep. And basically I would create, 20 or 30 of those, a little bit better done. I would do them by hand with color markers, right? Yeah. And I would just, as I teach the point, I said, hey, here's a lesson. It's super interactive. People love it. You don't have to know much technology. And, it's very different than just kind of me talking like, But now you've got, hey, look, here's a visual for you. Right?
I do this. So I do this at times because people say, if you want to build, this is my book, and I'll just pull it. So yeah, I have some stuff like that laying on my desk that, depending on what comes up, I'll pull it up and go, here, like for example, let's see, I'll pull it out while we're talking about it. This is for my podcast. So look, I made a little sign. There's my podcast.
Love that.
Just some stuff like that. And it's just kind of fun. It breaks it up and that kind of stuff. But, be creative. I don't think you have to be. Blab is to me, Blab's more casual than webinars typically. Yep. Because, we're sitting in our offices chit-chatting away, that kind of thing. But yeah, you do something that gets their attention. That's really how you get people engaged. It just is. So true. We do have a question here, and they ask if you can share a screen, PowerPoint slides, and Blab at the same time. In order to share a screen or PowerPoint and Blab, you're going to have to use something like Wirecast or XSplit or Cam Twist or there's another one, Minicam, I think is what it's called. But you can tell on my screen, if you're looking at it, we're in little squares. So if you're going to use slides, they can't have a lot of verbiage on it because people won't be able to read them. Yeah. So I just, I'm not saying not use it. I've seen some people use it, and, depending on what you're doing, it might add to it. I did have, I'll share this because
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I had a person the other day when we did one that wanted to know if they could teach beekeeping on Blab. And I don't see why not. I mean, I don't know if I want bees in my house, but I guess you could take your camera outside. So hey, go at it, go for it.
Yeah. So when you with the question you just asked, which is can I show my screen? I tend to always ask the question behind the question, which is why would you want to do that in the first place? Is it something so intricate and so difficult to explain that you have to have a visual, or are you just trying to find a crutch? And again, if you're looking for a crutch, do yourself a little handwritten note that's going to kind of distract your audience while you may be looking at some other notes, or what if that makes you feel more comfortable. But remember this, if you understand your audience and you show up to help them and you've got good stuff, people don't need that many visuals, It's really about teaching what people want to learn and then trying to figure out how to do it better in different modalities. So start where you are, Start with what you got, but just get going.
Yeah, that is the message I give all the time. Just go out, take one step a day, just one step.
Yep.
You don't have to climb the mountain in one day. We watched Everest the other night. You don't have to climb the mountain in one day. My husband's like, did that inspire you to go climb Everest? I'm like, no, it inspired me to never climb Everest. I'm like,
I had on my computer, I had a note. This is now 20 years ago that my screen actually opened. But it was my dream at one point, or I thought it was my dream to climb Mount Everest. And on my computer, I had a question: what are you doing today to get closer to Everest? And man, I watched Everest too, and I'm thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't like cold.
I mean, I think you have to know what you want to do. I know people that would love to climb Everest. I hope they're able to do it. That's their thing. My husband participated in this event last year that was SEAL training. Yep. He asked me if I wanted to do it. I'm like, no, it doesn't appear. No,
I'll sign up for that. That sounds good. I'll sign up for that.
Yeah. Look at my blab. I interviewed him. You can see, you can hear what he did. But if you look last month I interviewed him. But a couple of years ago, he asked me if I wanted to hike the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim in 2 days. And I thought, sure, that sounds like something I could do. It was great. It was a great experience. But again, we didn't train overnight. We trained for 9 months to do that. So we didn't start off being able to go hike, the Grand Canyon. So, know what your goal is and just work toward it. It's not, you don't have to get there overnight. You can get success and things like that.
And some goals might change. Like you say you want to climb Everest, and you go like, I don't think I want to do that anymore. That's okay too.
Oh, I'll tell you, I sit down and write goals every year. I've done it for years and years and years. For whatever reason, I won't go into all that. But, I look back at my goals. I always do it the week between Christmas and New Year's. And I look back at my goals for last year. And it's funny, I had a couple of goals for last year that somewhere during the year, I realized that's not the direction I wanted to go. And I didn't go back and look at them and go, oh, I'm so stupid or whatever. I just realized I was on a different path. What I thought I needed to do wasn't really what I needed to do. So yeah, they changed. But I think we don't have any more questions. First of all, I want to thank you, Adam. This has been great. I've learned a lot. It's been a really fun conversation. I've enjoyed interacting with you. So thank you so much for being on here with me.
Likewise. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate being here. And, hopefully for those folks that stuck with us for more than like 60 seconds, they got a little bit out of it. And, the thing is, one last tip for everybody.
Sure.
Whatever stuck for you out of this conversation, go and put it into action. And just do one thing, but do it to the point where it actually gets you a result. So it starts producing whatever it's desired to do. Don't just do it like, 3/4 of the way and go, it's getting hard. Yeah, the last quarter will be the hardest, but do it so you can actually get the result out of it. And then the next idea, and again, implement it completely. And that's how successful people become unstoppable. Getting an idea, implementing it completely, moving on to the next one. So whatever stuck for you out of this conversation, just do it.
Amen. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate your time today and all of your great advice. And I look forward to crossing paths with you again one day. So
absolutely.
Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you. Take care. Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.